I think it's safe to say that the 2024 election has already been one of the craziest elections ever, and the election hasn't even officially happened yet. I mean, we went from them trying to take out Donald Trump while live on television in front of a crowd of thousands of people. The next thing you know, there's a coup and they force Biden out of the election, and then Kamala Harris steps up. We got the RNC, we got the DNC, we got speeches from all types of people. You got Hulk Hogan out there ripping his shirt. You got people crying over their dads delivering speeches. I mean, it's been off the freaking chain so far. And like I said, I think we've heard speeches from everybody you can think of. And of course, we've heard from Donald Trump like 15 times a day. We've heard from J.D. Vance. Kamala Harris is still hiding from the media. But out of everything that has happened, I think that the speech delivered by RFK Jr. when he dropped out of the race yesterday, I think that this may be one of the most important speeches from this current election, at least right now. We got months to go, people. We got all of this crazy stuff happening. Who knows what crazy stuff may still come? You know what I mean? We still got months to go. But as of right now, I think this speech delivered by RFK, I think it may go down in history. Not necessarily just because of the contents of the speech, but because of what may come of this moving forward. To see someone like RFK Jr., who was a Democrat, who kind of got ousted by the Democrats, who got blocked from trying to run for president. For a lack of better words, that's what happened here. The Democrats pulled some shady stuff to ensure that RFK Jr. couldn't be where Kamala Harris is right now. Because if things went fairly and the people made the decision and the people's voice actually mattered, RFK Jr. would be the Democratic nominee. But now, of course, the Democrats stopped that from happening. We got cackling Kamala running for president. And now RFK has endorsed Donald Trump. And this looks like it's going to be more than just an endorsement. It looks like these two men are going to work together. And I'm really excited to see what they can accomplish together. But as of right now, everyone seems to be focused on the hype of RFK Jr. joining Donald Trump on stage and what was said on stage between these two men. And we're definitely going to talk more about that. I got some clips that I'll show you in future videos. But for right now, I think it's important, if you haven't already, to just listen to some of what RFK Jr. was saying yesterday when he dropped out of the race. I want to play this real quick, and then I'll be right back with more thoughts.
Instead of showing us her substance and character, the DNC and its media organs engineered a surge of popularity for Vice President Harris based upon, nothing. No policies, no interviews, no debates, only smoke and mirrors and balloons in a highly produced Chicago circus. There in Chicago, a string of Democratic speakers mentioned Donald Trump 147 times just on the first day. Oh, who needs a policy when you have Trump to hate? In contrast, at the RNC convention, President Biden was mentioned only twice in 4 days. Institutions, for our media, and for our government, and most sadly at all for me, for the Democratic Party. In the name of saving democracy, the Democratic Party set itself to dismantling it, lacking confidence in its candidate, that its candidate could win in a fair election at the voting booth. The DNC waged continual legal warfare against both President Trump and myself. A few minutes later, and I met with him the following day. A few weeks later, I met again with President Trump and his family members and close advisors in Florida. In a series of long, intense discussions, I was surprised to discover that we are aligned on many key issues. In those meetings, he suggested that we join forces as a unity party. We talked about Abraham Lincoln's team of rivals. That arrangement would allow us to disagree publicly and privately, and fiercely, if need be, on issues over which we differ, while working together on the existential issues upon which we are in concordance. I was a ferocious critic of many of the policies during his first administration, and there are still issues and approaches upon which we continue to have very serious differences. But we are aligned with each other on other key issues, like ending the forever wars, ending the childhood disease epidemics, securing the border, protecting freedom of speech, unraveling the corporate capture of our regulatory agencies, getting the U.S. intelligence agencies out of the business of propagandizing and censoring and surveilling Americans and interfering with our elections. Following my first discussion in April of 2022, President Biden sent Boris Johnson to Ukraine to force President Zelensky to tear up a peace agreement that he and the Russians had already signed, and the Russians were withdrawing troops from Kiev and Donbass and Lugansk. And that peace agreement would have brought peace to the region and would have allowed Donbass and Lugansk to remain part of Ukraine. President Biden stated that month that his objective in the war was regime change in Russia. His Defense Secretary, Lloyd Austin, simultaneously explained that America's purpose in the war was to exhaust the Russian army, to degrade its capacity to fight anywhere else in the world. These objectives, of course, have nothing to do with what they were telling Americans about protecting Ukraine's sovereignty. Are we allowing this to happen to our children? These are the most precious assets that we have in this country. How can we let this happen to them? About 18% of American teens now have fatty liver disease. That's like 1 out of every 5. That disease, when I was a kid, only affected late-stage alcoholics who were elderly. Cancer rates are skyrocketing in the young and the old. Young adult cancers are up 79%. 1 in 4 American women is on antidepressant medication. 40% of teens have a mental health diagnosis. And 15% of high schoolers are on Adderall, and 500,000 children on SSRIs. So what's causing this suffering? I'll name 2 culprits. The first and the worst is ultra-processed food. About 70% of American children's diet is ultra-processed. That means industrial manufactured in a factory. These foods consist primarily of processed sugar, ultra-processed grains, and seed oils. Laboratory scientists who many of whom formerly worked for the cigarette industry, which purchased all the big food companies in the 1970s and 80s, deployed thousands of scientists to figure out new chemicals to make the food more addictive. And these ingredients didn't exist 100 years ago. Humans aren't biologically adapted to eat them. Hundreds of these chemicals are now banned in Europe, but ubiquitous in American processed foods. The second culprit is toxic chemicals in our food, our medicine, in our environment. Pesticides, food additives, pharmaceutical drugs, and toxic waste permeate every cell of our bodies. The assault on our children's cells and hormones is unrelenting. To name just one problem, many of these chemicals increase estrogen because young children are ingesting so many of these hormone disruptors. America's puberty rate is now occurring at age 10 to 13, which is 6 years earlier than girls were reaching puberty in 1900. Our country has the earliest puberty rates of any continent on the earth. And no, this isn't because of better nutrition. This is not normal. Breast cancer is also estrogen-driven, and it now strikes 1 in 8 women. We are mass poisoning all of our children and our adults.
Like I said, folks, I think this will go down as a historical moment in politics, and I think this may actually cause a shift in our culture. A shift in politics as well. A shift within people. Finally gaining the courage to walk away from all of the madness that the Democratic Party has been spewing and has been preaching for the last few years. Because I know that for the average Democrat that's not into all of that far left nonsense they've been spreading, I know it has to be hard to sit there watching your political party lose their absolute minds, watching them advocate for certain things like tampons in boys' bathrooms. Hey, we need more men competing in women's sports. Your kids need to be taken away if you don't want us talking to them about, weird, creepy stuff in school. I think that for your average person, they're seeing this and it's overwhelming. They don't know what to do. And then RFK Jr. has a mic drop moment. He craps all over the Democratic Party. He lets the reason be known very clearly why he's stepping away. And I think that will give other people the courage to do the same. And even if it doesn't, it doesn't matter. That's okay. Because nothing can take that moment away. And I think that these two men, Donald Trump and RFK Jr., are capable of doing some great things in the future. Great things for America, things that we haven't seen our political leaders do for our country in a very long time. So I don't know about you all, I don't know about anyone else, but personally, I'm kind of excited, I'm kind of looking forward to what this partnership could bring about. Hopefully, they actually work together on doing some things moving forward. But for now, I want you all to do some things down in the comments below. While you're down there, hit that thumbs up, hit that subscribe, ring that notification bell. And if you find yourself getting too worked up by all of this, remember, it's just political cinema.